Yada bim bada bum, yada bim bada bum, yada bim bum bim bum, yada bim bada bum, yada bim bada bum, yada bim bum bim bum. I chitty 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 bim bum bum, I chitty 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 bim bum bum, I chitty 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 bim bum bum, I chitty 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 bum, chitty bim, chitty bum, yada bim bum, yada bim bum bim bum, yada bim bada bum, yada bum. Yada bim bum bum. I chitty 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 bum. Yada bim bada bum. Yada bim bada bum. Yada bim bum bim bum. Yada bim bada bum. Yada bim bada bum. Yada bim bum bim bum. This is better for this heat, don't you think? Yada biddy biddy bim bum bum. I chitty 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 bim bum bum. I chitty 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 bim bum bum. I chitty 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 bum. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Can anybody feel any air moving? Just a little bit, maybe? Well, maybe when we sing, we'll get some air moving. That would be really great. Karen, would you do us the honors and give us a reading on page 3 and take us into Shabbat as you light the candles?
As these Sabbath candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to make the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter the sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of our hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
Sure. Oh, they're trick matches. It's a wonderful prescription. Add light, add sweetness, And voila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafel.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho v'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila l'mikrae kodesh zecher litziat Mitzrayim ki vanu v'acharta otanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. Always a good message. Yay. All right. So, wave hello to everybody in YouTube land. Let's make sure everybody knows one another. Wish one another Shabbat Shalom. I know there's at least one person here that doesn't know somebody else's name. So, okay. We welcome our better angels on page 24. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Tzedchem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Oh, Ben, keep us going on that. Thanks. Oh, there's tension wrapped up in keeping our cool, isn't there? So let's take a moment and let that go. Find those knots that tie us up, twisted, keeping our jaws clenched, our brains cut off from creativity, keeps our hearts from crying, keep us from dancing. They stop us from inhaling the full sweetness of life's breath. So let's send some air to those knots. Loosen them up. Make ourselves a clear channel. Anna v'choach gedulat yamincha tatir tzerura. Anna v'choach gedulat yamincha tatir tzerura. Anna v'choach gedulat yamincha tatir tzerura. Baruch Shem kivod malchuto leolam va'ed. Baruch Shem kivod malchuto leolam va'ed. Anna v'choach gedulat yamincha tatir tzerura. Anna v'choach gedulat yamincha tatir tzerura. When we're clear, we can smell joy, we can feel joy, we can taste joy, we can dance joy. It's our Yismachu mashup. Put a finger in page 44, but turn to page 13. Yismachu Hashamayim, Yismachu Hashamayim, Yismachu Hashamayim, V'tagel haaretz. Yismachu Hashamayim, Yismachu Hashamayim, Yismachu Hashamayim, V'tagel haaretz. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam umelo. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam umelo. Yismechu v'malchutecha shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat bekorei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malchutecha shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat bekorei oneg Shabbat. Mekadeshei, Mekadeshei Shavi Shabbat. Kulam yisbehu, ve'yitangu metu v'cha Shabbat. Yismechu v'malchutecha shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat bekorei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malchutecha shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat bekorei oneg Shabbat. Ve'ashvi ratzita bo v'kidashto Shabbat. Chemdan yamim oto karata Shabbat. Yismechu v'malchutecha shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat bekorei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malchutecha shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat bekorei oneg Shabbat. Lemase Bereshit Shabbat. Lemase Bereshit Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha. Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'koreh. Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha. Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat. V'koreh oneg Shabbat. Take us to the princess, page 20. Nine, nine, nine.
Lechadodi lekrat kalai yadadai 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 bnei Shabbat nekabelah. Lechadodi lekrat kalai yadadai 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 bnei Shabbat nekabelah. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad Hishmeyanu el hamyuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad L'shem ol tiferet v'el hilah Lecha dodi lekrat kalai yadadai 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 bnei Shabbat nekabelah Lecha dodi lekrat kalai yadadai 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 bnei Shabbat nekabelah.
Second stanza.
Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki mekor haberacha mirosh mekedem nesucha sof maaseh v'machshavat hilah lecha dodi likrat kalai yadadai 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 bnei Shabbat nekabelah. Lecha dodi likrat kalai yadadai 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 bnei Shabbat nekabelah.
Fifth stanza.
Hitoreri, hitoreri, ki va'orech umi uri, 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 shidaberi, kevod Adonai alai leknilah. Lecha dodi likrat kalai yadadai 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 bnei Shabbat nekabelah. Lecha dodi likrat kalai yadadai 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 bnei Shabbat nekabelah.
Rise if you're able and face the vision. Your vision.
Boi
Ninth
v'shalom
stanza.
ateret bala gam besimcha u'v'tzola toch emunei am segula boi chala lecha dodi likrat kalai yadadai 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 bnei Shabbat nekabelah. Lecha dodi likrat kalai yadadai 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 bnei Shabbat nekabelah.
Remain standing if you're able, because we rise. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. We rise, humbly hearted, rise, won't be divided, rise, with Spirit to guide us. Rise in hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. We rise. All of the children rise. Elders with wisdom rise. Ancestors surround us. Rise. All together in hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. We rise. Yes, up from the wreckage, rise. With tears and with courage, rise. Fighting for life, we rise. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Hu. Sometimes that praise has to come with the breath. Sacred words, even the evenings. Wisdom opens gates locked around our hearts. Asher bidvaro mahari varavi, v'chochma poteach she'ari. Evening, the evenings, evening the frayed edges of our lives. Ma'ariv, Aravim, Amen. Understanding alters with the times, changing seasons, cycles divine. Uvid vuna meshane itim, umachalif et hazmanim. Evening the frayed edges of our lives. Ma'ariv, Aravim, Amen. Paint diamonds on the canvas called sky. Soothe our souls with a lilting lullaby. Umesaderet הכוכבים משמורותיהם ברקיע כרצונו. Evening, the evenings, evening the frayed edges of our lives. Ma'ariv, Aravim, Amen. rolling away the light. Golel or mipnei hoshech, vehoshech mipnei ho. Evening, the evening, the frayed edges of our lives. Ma'ariv, Aravim, Amen. Spirit of the night, we bless your name. Eternal light, eternal flame. El Chai v'Kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed. Evening, the evening, the frayed edges of our lives. Ma'ariv, Aravim,
Amen.
Even them out. Ma'ariv,
Aravim,
Amen.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael.
32.
Amcha ahavta, Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, Ugim u'mishpatim, Otanu lemadeta, Otanu lemadeta. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu b'shachbenu, ufkumenu ne'atziach b'chukecha, v'nismach divrei Toratecha, ובמשפטיך לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגה יומם ולילה, נגה יומם ולילה, ואהבת אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך
ובשכבך ובקומך,
וקשרתם
להוד על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Amen. Love your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind the words I command you today. Teach them to your children. Talk about them at work, whether you're tired or you're rested or you're hot. Let them guide the work of your hands. Keep them in the forefront of your vision. Don't leave them about the doorway of your house or outside your gate. They're reminders. They're reminders to do all of my mitzvot so that you can be holy for God. I am Adonai, your God. I led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai, your God. Emet ve'emunah kol zot. All this we hold to be trustworthy and true for us, that you alone are God, and we are Israel, your people. They accepted your sovereignty as we do now, Moses, Miriam, and all Israel, singing to you together, lifting our voices as we do now on page 40. Who could possibly be like you?
Mihi kamocha balim Adonai, mihi kamocha nedar bakodesh, norad hilot o sefele, norad hilot o sefele, malekutecha rahu baneka, bokei ayam lifnei Moshe Miriam. Zeli anu ve'amru Adonai himlo leolam va'ed. ונאמר כי פדלני עד לכל וגלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני
Baruch Shemo.
גאל ישראל.
Page 43.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, לשלום, והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים. פרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך.
Raise us up.
Amen.
Spread over us the shelter of your peace.
Guide
us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help.
Shield
and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing.
השכיבנו
God.
Eloheinu
Watch over us.
L'shalom.
Deliver us. Because you're gracious
V'hamidenu
and you're merciful.
shomrenu
Guard our coming and our going to life and to
l'chaim.
peace evermore.
Ufros alenu
Blessed are you,
sukat
Adonai,
shlomecha.
Guardian of
Ufros
Israel.
alenu sukat
Shelter of peace is spread
shlomecha.
over us always. Over all your people and over Yerushalayim.
Amen.
Invite us to rise at intimate conversation with our Creator, where we start on 46, just asking that the words might flow. Yadonai, 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 Adonai. Yadonai, 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 Svatai Tiftach. Yadonai, 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 Ufi Yagid. Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Yadonai, 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 Adonai. Yadonai, 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 Svatai Tiftach. Yadonai, 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 Ufi Yagid. Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Yadonai, 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 Adonai. Yadonai, 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 Svatai Tiftach. Yadonai, 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 Ufi Yagid. Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. המלך חוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע. מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו. לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. נאמן אתה לחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יעלוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. I invite you to continue your prayer, your conversation privately. Take the time you need. Be seated when you're finished. We'll meet back up on, somewhere around page 60. יברך אלוקים את הנשמים וקדש אותו, כיבוש שבת במלאכתו, שבניים לעשות. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ומתינו וציוונו ופרשים מצוותיו ותעבודין תורתך. רוצה את אדוני יהיו מלאסן את תפילתם. תהיה רצון תמיד עבודת ישראל. מודים אנחנו לך שאתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו לעצמנו. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם כי אתה המלך גדול לכל השלום וטוב בעיניך. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו Ba-da-dum pum pum pum, ya-da-dum pum pum, ya-da-dum pa-ba-da-dum pum, ya-da-da ya-da-da-da-da-da-da, ya-na-na-na-na-na-na, ya-na-na-na-na, ya-na-na-na-na-na-na, ya-na-na-na-na-na-na, oh say shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן. Yum ba-da-dum pum pum pum, yum ba-da-dum pum pum, ya-da-dum pum ba-da-dum pum. Ya-da-da, ya-da-da-da, ya-na-na-na-na, ya-da, ya-na-na-na-na, ya-na, ya-na-na-na-na, ya-na-na-na-na-na-na. ואמרו אמן. create a pure heart within me. Let my soul wake up in your light. Open me to your presence. Flood me with your Holy Spirit. Then I will stand and sing out the power of your forgiveness. I will teach your love to the lonely, the lost. They're going to find their way home. Adonai, open up my lips and let our mouths declare your praise. All right. So we never let the chance go by to offer a prayer for healing. Healing of body, spirit, psyche, relationship, self. It's all kosher. So you guys know the drill. We'll call out the names between the stanzas on page 253.
Mi sheberach avotenu Mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen.
We're especially remembering and holding in our hearts this week Millie Rottenberg, Howard Simon, Gloria Berkowitz, Gittel Bat Chana, Bernice Portney, Beryl Ben Sima Vishmuel Leib, Steve Gellish, Sholem Avram Ben Golda Yeshayahu, Michael Rosenblum, Harav Miriam Yael Chaya Bat Sarah Yitzchak, Maxwell Zwain, Menachem Mendel Ben Yehudit Michael, Dr. Isoken Osamwota, Alan Mentha, Alon Ben Yael Perel, Marlon Williams, Eric Rivchin, Rhoda Alaribe, Luke Wright, Kendall Chaya Rafaela Bat Yehudit Sharon, Nancy Samble, Nahama Bat Yaakov Rachel, and to these names we add
Josie. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit. And let us say, Amen.
May they all be blessed with a refuah shlema, a healing of wholeness. And also, please watch over those who care for them. Help one another through this time. So, like Karen, you know how when Bob sent that email saying it's 86 degrees and it feels fine in the sanctuary? Yeah. All I can say is that we've got a different heating system. You were right. All right. Is it? Okay. Actually, if I wasn't putting out energy, it would probably be fine. Anywho, Shabbat Shalom. Good to see everybody. All right. I'm gonna find my spot here. So, you know, you gotta reflect on. All right, I can't do this way. I gotta drink first. Hang on. See, I've got my I Love Olive sticker. The way the culture in which we're living is shifting. I know it feels like it's one step forward, two steps back, and we're so nervous that we're going to lose the freedoms that we've gotten, but I think it's really heartening if we see where we are now, even where we were 10 years ago. the way we're paying attention to the implicit bias that we all walk around with, whether it's our color, our privilege, our ableness. More and more, we're becoming attuned to ways in which we can act and speak more sensitively to all who have been and still so often are marginalized. Even here, instead of saying, please rise, which we're probably all accustomed to hearing our entire life, right now more often than not, you'll hear, please rise if you are able, not assuming that everybody can stand up so easily or stay standing. And instead of the genderized bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah, more and more we're hearing, and we are using too, the terms, the gender-neutral term, b'nai mitzvah, and some people like b mitzvah. And we moderns, we have a tremendous amount of difficulty with many of our Jewish texts. You don't have to look very far for misogyny, violence, discrimination, ableism, homophobia. It's rampant. For example, I was just talking this week about a particular morning prayer that we have, thanking God for what is on its surface for eyesight. That we wake up in the morning, we thank God everything's working, including we open our eyes and they work. We say, Pokeach Ivrim, Baruch Ata Adonai, Pokeach Ivrim. Blessed is the one who opens the eyes of the blind. But what about when everything doesn't work? Or people for whom their eyes don't work? Isn't this prayer giving thanks for sight ableists? What about blind people? Or people who wear glasses? Or even people who are just getting more farsighted as they age? Well, I was talking to somebody this week, as I mentioned, who saw this prayer as insensitive. She even suggested that maybe we should remove this prayer from the morning liturgy. I mean, think about it. If you were making decisions about which prayers would go in and which prayers would come out, would you remove that from our prayer book today? Another example of this on a slightly different level is the second paragraph of the traditional Shema. Now, if you've grown up in the Reform movement, you would think that the second paragraph is the last paragraph, but in fact, there's a second paragraph that's a middle paragraph, and that's been the middle paragraph for about 2,000 years in the Jewish world. And it reads that if we follow, basically, this is a paraphrase, if we follow all the mitzvot, we're going to have all kinds of blessings that will befall us and our children into eternity, and we will live contentedly. Conversely, if we follow other gods, we will suffer. Many, especially in the Reform movement, read that as a simplistic and untenable philosophy by which to live. And putting it that way, I wouldn't disagree. We all know good people who suffer and bad people who thrive. Could any of us pray that with integrity if we understood the prayer in that way? So I ask you here too, if you were making those decisions, would you remove it from a prayer book that you edited? And this brings us to our Parsha. Oh, it's the Reform movement, by the way, we've taken out that. It's the American Reform movement. So that brings us to our Parsha, which is Pinchas. At the very end of last week's Parsha, we read this. While Israel was staying at Shittim, the menfolk profaned themselves by whoring with the Moabite women who invited the menfolk to the sacrifices for their God. The menfolk partook of them and worshipped that God, and thus Israel attached itself to the God of Baal Peor, and Adonai was incensed with Israel. God says to Moses, take all the ringleaders and have them publicly impaled before Adonai, so that Adonai's wrath may turn away from Israel. Then we read that one zealous fanatic, Pinchas, where the name comes from, by the way, Phineas, takes the matter into his own hands, and upon seeing an Israelite, one Zimri ben Salu, being publicly intimate with a Midianite woman, identified as Cosbi Batsur, he follows them into their chambers and slayed them with a single thrust of a spear through both at the place at which their bodies were joined. It's a graphic and obviously shocking image. And then we learn that the plague against the Israelites was then checked, but those who died of the plague numbered 24,000 people. And this is where the Parsha ends, in Jewish time, giving us a week to process that story and understand it, make sense of it, find meaning in it, or not. But then this week, the Torah picks up by pronouncing that God's wrath was reversed because of Pinchas' passionate act for God. We're told that this violent act stopped God from wiping out the Israelites completely. And further, God says, I grant Pinchas my pact of friendship, pronouncing that it goes to him and his descendants in a pact for the priesthood for all time. And if you find this a problematic text, you wouldn't be the first. Anybody find it problematic? Maybe? A little bit? Yes? No? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Anybody? I can't hear you, Glenn. Okay. So these are three, this prayer for the eyes, the second paragraph of the Shema, Pinchas, the story of Pinchas, that don't have anything to do with one another. But I think that there are three instances of many places in our texts that raise ethical eyebrows, especially from a modern sensibility. But it would be a mistake to assume that even the authors of our most problematic Jewish texts haven't done some of this wrestling within and among ourselves often, but not always, certainly not always, come to surprising conclusions. In the case of opening our eyes for the blind, the rabbis show tremendous sensitivity and integrity toward those with compromised eyesight. The Talmud specifically asks whether a blind person should even be allowed to say the prayer, already establishing that it's not permissible to offer any prayer in vain or one that's not possible. Could someone who is blind or compromised eyesight even say this prayer with integrity and authenticity? The rabbis answer that not only is it permitted for somebody who is blind, but it would also be required for them, because they teach that everyone must offer the prayer because, in effect, we're all blind. They teach that the blindness referred to in the prayer doesn't have to refer to a physical blindness. It's also maybe our blind spot, because we all have blind spots. It's our inability to grasp or understand so many things. But I think that this begs a question that's bigger and crucially more important for the times that we're living in today. Our tradition emphasizes questions, wrestling, debating, and critical thinking. Our texts never give us pat, simple morality tales. Our most critical texts, and absolutely including the Torah, is rife with examples of even our biggest heroes behaving very badly. They do good, and they do bad. Their humanity is in 3D, and it's there for all of us to see. Our texts, they beg questions. We learn from the conversations that we have around the questions. We can clarify our values from the examples of the good and the bad. We learn resilience from the good and the bad in our past. We learn forgiveness from the good and the bad in our pasts. If we learn, if they're not there, we lose the ability to manage discomfort and tension. And we learn how to manage ideas and people we disagree with from the good and the bad in our texts. In fact, I would even say that the Jewish people survive only because of these problematic texts. How would we grow without them? How would we have survived or made difficult decisions if all we had were perfect, the sensitive, the equal, the just? How could we develop the tools that we need to apply one situation to another situation over time without the principles that we gather from wrestling with them? How would we develop the ability to manage discomfort and tension? How would we develop our own theology if we didn't have texts we loved and texts that we wrestled with? Ultimately, how would we know that our lives are about repairing if there wasn't so much brokenness in our foundational texts? So yes, every morning in the Siddur we offer thanks for opening our eyes. Each year we wonder, what was God thinking by giving that blessing to Pinchas? And that second paragraph in the Shema, American Reformed prayer books removed that paragraph in about the 1850s. But the leaders of our movement put it back in early drafts of this Siddur that we have here, in those first drafts. Ultimately, they took it out in the last edition, compromising by restoring the third paragraph to its whole original and including the second paragraph in our High Holy Day prayer book, but omitting that paragraph from our weekly and daily Siddur. I'm going to be honest and say I was disappointed by that decision, because I was disappointed because it denies Reformed Jews the opportunity to wrestle with the text, to argue with it, to disagree with it. And I believe that makes us poorer and less equipped to think for ourselves. And I'll tell you another thing. I put money on them restoring it in the next Reformed Siddur. Because you know what? We know better. This isn't an academic question, though. We live in a world in which people who raise difficult questions are routinely shamed into silence. We live in a world which sensitivity can become license to stretch reality. We live in a world in which free speech is threatened and shadows are cast upon truth with innuendo and worse. There's certainly boundaries of ethics, boundaries of good taste, and boundaries of safety which guide our speech in our world, just as there are in the Jewish textual tradition. But just as all of the majority and the minority decisions are retained, just as all the illustrious and demeaning stories and examples of elevated and bad behavior are front and center in our texts, so much we too today uphold and celebrate the ability to wrestle and civilly debate with ideas for ourselves, for our communities, for our country, and for our world. So bring them on. Shabbat Shalom. So we're about to enter the month of Av. It's coming this week. So I'm going to invite us to turn to page, I think it's 261. Of course, this is the point where I can never find my cue sheet. And offer the blessing for the new month. May it be your will, Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, to renew our lives in the coming month. Grant us a long life, a peaceful life, with goodness and blessing, sustenance and physical vitality, a life informed by purity and piety, a life free from shame and reproach, a life of abundance and honor, a life embracing justice and love of Torah, a life in which our heart's desire for goodness will be fulfilled. And we say, Amen. The new month of Av will begin on Thursday night and Friday. Rosh Chodesh Menachem Av Yeh Bayom HaShishi Haba Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael Letova יחדשהו קדוש ברוך הוא עלינו ועל כל עמו בית ישראל לחיים ולשלום. That's for life and for peace. Give me an amen.
Amen.
לששון ולשמחה, for gladness and for joy. Give me an amen. לפרנסה טובה ולברכה, for the ability to earn a good living and for blessing. לישועה ולנחמה, for redemption and for comfort. ונאמר Amen. I think we're up to Elena, right? Yeah, so, let's rise for this. And repeat after me, you don't need a book. והשבותה אל לבביך כי אדוני הוא האלוהים כן והשבותה אל לבביך כי אדוני הוא האלוהים ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו Our thoughts now turn to those who gave us life, who taught us, who walked with us, who held our hands, but who no longer walk this earth. The Mourner's Kaddish on page 294. If I call the name of your loved one, I invite you to please rise in your place. We're remembering Molly Heitner, who was with us for many, many, many years. Anupam Dasgupta. And we're observing the yard sites of Emmanuel Eagle, Rhoda Magalevi, Harry Schwartzbard, and Arnold Vernick. If there's anyone else who's observing a yard site or who is in their year of mourning, or it's just your custom to rise for the Kaddish, I invite you to do so now on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'alma divrach erutei v'yamlich malchutei. בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן.
Amen. May their memories always be for blessing. Hey, Karen, you feel like doing announcements? All right. You have them? All right. Yes, use that.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everyone up there. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
but it's got to be pretty close.
Okay. So because of the high holiday code infection rate, we are asking you to remain masked during services and to social distance when appropriate. Am I back on? As
No.
always, we'd like
Anybody at the mic gets to takes the mask off. Yeah.
As always, I'd like to thank Seth, who always ensures that the YouTube feed and the videos working, and every Friday, every service, Seth would love to have volunteers to help him and is willing to train those of you who are interested. So please talk to Seth Lubin. And you can see the newsletter as well for other volunteer and mitzvah opportunities to strengthen our community and get involved. You can ask me, Karen, Rabbi, Tom, Nancy. One of those is, I'm going to change that order a little bit, is our food pantry. We've moved the food pantry to Thursday evenings from Wednesdays. That began last week. It's just 1 hour a week of time needed to help pack the bags and give out items from our pantry to our neighbors in need. You can register for the food pantry to volunteer on our website. We also always need both monetary donations for the pantry, as well as you can have items delivered through our Amazon wish list. Both donations, monetary donations and Amazon wish list donations can be accessed through our website. As a reminder, Teruma pledges were due on July 1st. So if you haven't done so, please do that as soon as possible. Registration will be required again for high holiday services, and that goes for our membership and also for our guests. So please make sure you register. Information has been shared via email to all members, appears in our newsletter as well, and available on our website. One really new and exciting thing that we're doing is our first Shabbat Dinner, which will take place next Friday.
Outside. Oh God, sorry.
Outside?
Outside if it's not raining. Yeah.
If it's not raining, it'll be outside in front of the synagogue. And it's Friday at 7. If you would like to be part of the dinner, you must register the Tuesday before. It's $18 per person, and you can register via our website. The dinner will replace the Kabbalat Shabbat prayer service for next Friday. We ask that everyone who does participate, and we hope you do, will help clean up afterwards. If you would like to bring wine, you may do so and share it with with the others who are here.
Glenn's got his bottle ready.
I'm sorry.
Glenn's got his bottle ready.
Okay, great. People who don't register are still welcome to come to the regular Oneg dessert, which will be after the Shabbat dinner, where we also will do the mourner's Kaddish as well, to remember a loved one during the Oneg.
Yeah, and the Mishberach too.
We also, our next Hot Shabbat is August 20th at 10:30 in the morning for singing, dancing, and story time for our little ones. Weather permitting, it will be outside. And I think that's it. I think that's everything. So thank you.
Thank you. I've totally lost my cue sheet. We're doing Ein Keloheinu now? 322. Yum bum 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 ba da 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 hi, yum dun dun da ya da 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 hi, yum ba da dum bum bum ba ya da dum ba ya da dum bum 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 bum. I did say 322, right? Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Yadada 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 na 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 Yadada na 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 Ein Kemoshienu, Mi Keloheinu, Mi Kadonenu, Mi Kemalkeinu, Yadada 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 na 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 yananai nanai nanai Ikemoshienu no de lelohenu no de ladonenu no de lemalkenu yananai 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 nanai nanai yananai nanai no de lemoshienu Baruch Eloheinu Baruch Adonenu Baruch Malkeinu Yananai 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 Nanai Yananai Nanai Baruch Moshienu Atahu Eloheinu Atahu Adonenu Atahu Malkeinu Yananai 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 Nanai Yananai Nanai Tahu Moshienu Yam pam 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 parararai Yam pam 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 parararai Yan tararai rai 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 Yaranai nai Yaranai nai 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 Shabbat shalom. Go ahead, make a motzi. Unless you're absconding with the challah. No. Oh, no, yeah, Winston's really good. He knows that we're not going to be so instead of defrosting a whole one, he just cuts up a couple of pieces. So he's make French toast. Ready? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Thank you. Amen. Thank you. Oh, Seth.